Kia ora mai tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Members, when we adjourned for the dinner break, we were discussing the Wellington Town Belt Bill, and the Honourable Member Brett Hudson has 9 minutes remaining to speak.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Brett Hudson.
Time for part 2 of thrilling instalment in the Wellington Town Belt Bill. Before we went to satiate our hunger, I was talking, Mr. Speaker, about the nature of the Wellington Town Belt and its shape, extending in a bit of a horseshoe from Mount Victoria around to its greatest point at the northern edge of the Ahumairangi Hill, which is the border with the greatest electorate in all of New Zealand. Wahariu. Wahariu. That's a fact that bears repeating time and time again, Mr. Speaker. So almost 400 hectares of town belt. Actually, there are no Ginsu steak knives, but we're going to get an extra 130 odd hectares in this deal because there's about that much that the town council treat as town belt like, it's actually parks and reserves. In the end, we'll end up with about 520 hectares of town belt under this bill once it is enacted. Mr. Speaker, it's something I was saying, it's something that all Wellingtonians can appreciate. And I think we all come together, there is a consensus in the House that this is a very good measure to protect that land into the future, to particularly make it more easy to manage by the council, to manage under a single piece of legislation. But there was one area that I had concerns about when the bill was introduced into the House, and that was around clause 23, or the potential carve-outs to the Public Works Act, which I felt were both unnecessary and unwise. In a sense, if they'd progressed forward, it would have created almost 2 tiers of acquisition under the notional auspices of public works. The actual Public Works Act itself, which would be used for everything else, and then this Wellington Town Belt Bill, which would give a special provision to the Wellington Town Belt and the Wellington Town Belt only. And one would ask oneself, why on earth would you do that? And so I looked into it. I couldn't see any real reason why the Public Works Act wouldn't apply as well to the Wellington Town Belt, particularly the road reserve that exists along part of it today. I couldn't see that it would apply any less well to that environment than it applies in any other. And you know, in my own personal circumstances, Mr. Speaker, in the past, I have had a property that was looking to be subject to compulsory acquisition under the Public Works Act. So having a personal interest, I took some effort to look into what that actually meant. And I discovered that it meant that there are several valuations taken, that the valuation of the land is made on the basis that the works aren't going ahead, or in other words, Mr. Speaker, we're assured under that Act, the provisions of the Public Works Act, to get a very fair and reasonable compensation for the land that is acquired. So I could not see any reason why you would say there would be a need to have a carve-out from a perfectly good Act and provisions in the Wellington Town Belt Bill. So I'm very pleased that the Wellington City Council agreed to amending clause 23 and that the carve-out has been removed. I think with that change, what we are left with is precisely the sort of bill we want to see that will provide protection for the town belt, that will make it a much easier thing to manage and which doesn't create multiple tiers, as I said, in the area of compulsory acquisition of land. So on that note, Mr. Speaker, I would simply like to say I commend this bill to the House.